This is a story about the real horror of forgetting. Not just where you put your keys, but the face of the person you love most in the world. It starts with a feeling, not a thought. A quiet, certain knowledge that you are being watched. You feel it on the back of your neck like a cold draft in a warm room. You have no reason to feel this way. You're in your own apartment. The doors are locked. The curtains are drawn. But the feeling is there, heavy and suffocating. That's how it is for me now, every single day. But it didn't begin here. It began 20 years ago in Prospect Park with a simple song. I was 7 years old. The park was our weekend cathedral. My mom would pack sandwiches and a red and white checkered blanket, and we'd spend the whole afternoon near the long meadow. I had a little fleet of die-cast metal cars, my most prized possessions. My favorite was a forest green sedan with a tiny scratch on the driver's side door. I called it the Scarab. That day, the sun was bright and the park was humming with life. Families were barbecuing, teenagers were throwing frisbees, and the air smelled of cut grass and charcoal. I was busy orchestrating a multi-car pile up in the roots of a giant oak tree when I realized I couldn't hear my mom humming anymore. I looked up. She wasn't on the blanket. For a 7-year-old, the world can shrink to the size of a blanket, and when that anchor is gone, you're adrift in a terrifyingly large ocean. Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at my insides. I stood up, clutching the scarab so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Mom?" I called out. My voice was a tiny, pathetic thing, swallowed by the vastness of the meadow. I started walking, then trotting, my eyes scanning the sea of strangers. Every woman with dark hair made my heart leap, only to have it crash back down. I was venturing further from our blanket, deeper into a part of the park I didn't recognize. The cheerful sounds of the meadow began to fade, replaced by the hushed quiet of a more wooded area. The trees grew closer together here, their leaves forming a dense canopy that dappled the ground in shifting, uncertain light. And that's when I heard it for the first time. It was a man's voice, soft and melodic. It wasn't singing a known tune. It was more like a nursery rhyme spoken with a strange, lilting cadence. It was a sing-song voice. One for the asking, the voice sang, seeming to come from just behind a thicket of bushes. I stopped walking. The voice wasn't scary, not at first. It was calm, almost gentle. I was a child, and a calm adult voice meant safety. I crept closer, peering through the leaves. I couldn't see him clearly. It was more of a shape, a silhouette against the brighter light of the path behind him. He was tall and unnaturally thin, like a figure drawn with a single quick stroke of a pen. He was wearing a hat with a wide brim that shadowed his face completely. He was just standing there, perfectly still, as he sang the next line. "Two for the taking." His head was tilted, as if looking down at something. I followed his unseen gaze and saw a little girl, maybe 5 years old, sitting in the grass. She had blonde pigtails and was holding a bright yellow ball. She wasn't crying or scared. She was just watching the tall, thin man. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of wrongness. This wasn't a father and daughter. This was something else. The air grew cold. I should have run. I should have screamed. But I was frozen, a little boy hidden in the bushes, watching a scene that wasn't meant for him. The man sang the third line, his voice a little lower now, a little more persuasive. 3 for a bargain. As he sang, he slowly lifted a hand. His fingers were long and slender, like a pianist's. He didn't reach for the girl. He just opened his palm, as if offering something. The girl didn't move. She just stared at his empty hand. I blinked. Just a single, slow blink. When my eyes opened, the yellow ball was gone from her grasp. It wasn't on the ground. It was just gone. The girl looked down at her empty hands, a look of mild surprise on her face, not fear. The sing-song man began the final line. His voice was barely a whisper now, a private, intimate sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. And for it to be forgotten, he lowered his hand. He turned, not his body, just his head, in my direction. I couldn't see his face under the hat, but I knew with the absolute certainty that only a terrified child can possess that he was looking right at me. A scream finally ripped its way out of my throat. It was a raw animal sound. I didn't wait to see what the man would do. I scrambled backwards, tearing myself away from the bushes, and ran. I ran blindly, tears streaming down my face, the sing-song voice echoing in my head. I crashed headlong into my mother's legs. She was calling my name, her voice frantic. She wrapped her arms around me, holding me tight. I was sobbing, trying to tell her about the tall man and the little girl and the yellow ball that vanished. She soothed me, told me I'd just had a little scare, that I'd gotten myself lost and my imagination had run away with me. When I finally calmed down, when my heart stopped feeling like it was going to beat its way out of my chest, I opened my hand. I had been clutching it shut the whole time. The scarab was gone. My favorite toy, the one I held onto like a lifeline, had vanished. I searched my pockets, the ground around us. It was nowhere. I cried again, a different kind of cry this time. The heartbroken sob of a child who has lost something precious. My mom assumed I dropped it while I was running. We looked for an hour, but we never found it. We never saw the little girl with the pigtails again. I looked for her, scanning the crowds as we left the park, but she was gone, too. For years, I convinced myself I had imagined it all. The memory faded, became soft around the edges, like a photograph left out in the sun. It was just a bad dream I'd had while I was awake, but I never forgot the song. 20 years later, I moved back to Brooklyn. Not out of any desire to be near the park, but for a job. I found a small apartment in Park Slope, a 15-minute walk from the Grand Army Plaza entrance. For the first year, the park was just a green space on a map, a place I passed on the bus. I didn't go in. I told myself I was too busy. The truth was, a part of me remembered. A part of me was still that 7-year-old boy, and he was afraid. The past stays buried only for so long. One evening, I was scrolling through a local news site, and a small headline caught my eye. Community concern grows over disappearance of pets near Prospect Park. Several dogs and cats had gone missing over the last few months, all from the neighborhoods bordering the park. The police had no leads. It was strange, they said, but likely unconnected incidents. I felt a cold prickle on my skin. Unconnected incidents. I closed my laptop, but the seed had been planted. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in the woods again. The light dappled and strange. I could hear the voice, faint and distant, like a radio playing in another room. 2 for the taking. I woke up in a cold sweat. The next morning, I couldn't find my favorite coffee mug. It was a big, heavy ceramic one, dark blue, a gift from my sister, Sarah. I wasn't overly attached to it, but its absence was a snag in the fabric of my morning routine. I searched every cabinet, the dishwasher, my office. It was gone. I figured I must have broken it and forgotten. It was annoying, but that's all it was. A week later, a book I was reading vanished from my nightstand. I was halfway through it. I lived alone. I was a tidy person. Things in my apartment didn't just disappear. I tore the place apart looking for it. Nothing. The unease grew, a low hum of anxiety in the back of my mind. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in 2 decades. I walked into Prospect Park. I told myself it was to get some fresh air, to clear my head. I walked along the main path, watching the weekend cyclists and joggers. It all felt so normal, so safe. I started to relax. Maybe I was just stressed from work, becoming forgetful and paranoid. I walked for over an hour, letting the familiar paths guide me. I found myself near the boating house, watching the swans on the lull water. The unease had faded almost completely. As I turned to leave, my eyes caught something on the edge of the path, tucked into the grass. It was a small plastic figurine, an astronaut with the paint worn off in places. It was the kind of toy you get from a gumball machine in the 90s. I don't know why, but I picked it up. It felt cold in my hand, unnaturally so. Holding it, a fragment of memory surfaced. The little girl with the pigtails. She had a little charm bracelet, and I remembered seeing a tiny plastic astronaut dangling from it. My blood ran cold. It was impossible. A 20-year-old piece of plastic sitting here? I dropped it as if it had burned me and backed away. I walked out of the park much faster than I had walked in. That night, I heard the song again. This time, I was wide awake. I was washing dishes, the water running. It was so faint I thought it was the pipes or music from a passing car. One for the asking. I shut off the water. The apartment was silent, dead silent. But I had heard it. I wasn't imagining it. The disappearances from my apartment escalated. It was no longer just trivial things. My spare set of keys vanished from the hook by the door. A bill I needed to pay disappeared from my desk. Each missing item was a fresh wave of anxiety. I started taking pictures of my things, of where I put my wallet and my keys, just to prove to myself I wasn't going insane. But it didn't help. The sing-song man, as my child brain had named him, didn't care about proof. He was a thief who left no trace. My work started to suffer. I was distracted, on edge. I looked pale. My boss told me to take a few days off. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. If only it were that simple. I spent my forced vacation falling down an internet rabbit hole. I searched for everything I could think of. Prospect Park disappearances. Missing children, Brooklyn, 1990s. Local urban legends. Most of it was useless. But then, buried deep in the search results, on page 14, I found it. A link to a defunct blog, a Geocities-looking relic from the early 2000s. The site was called Brooklyn's Whispers. The last post was from 2003. The post was titled, "The Sing-Song Man." My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked it. The author, who went by the username Old Man Hemlock, described a local folktale he'd heard from his grandmother. A story about a tall, thin man in a hat who haunted the wooded parts of the park. A boogeyman used to scare children into staying close to their parents. He said the man would sing a little song to lure you in, and then he wrote out the rhyme. 1 for the asking, 2 for the taking, 3 for a bargain, and 4 to be forgotten. It was the exact same words. I felt a wave of dizzying validation, followed immediately by sheer terror. This was real. It had a name. It had rules. The blogger wrote that the Sing-Song Man was a creature of quiet theft. He started with small, sentimental objects, trinkets, toys, things you would miss, things whose absence would create a small, cold hole in your life. He fed on that little pang of loss. If you lingered, if you let him stay in your thoughts, he would take more. He would take things you needed, keys, wallets, passports. He fed on the panic, on the frantic searching, on the disruption to your life. The last paragraph of the blog post was a warning. My grandmother told me that if you hear his song, you must leave. Do not listen. Do not look for him. Do not let him finish the rhyme. He takes things, but the rhyme is an offer, an invitation. And if you accept the bargain on the 3rd line, the price is always more than you can pay. And if you let him reach the 4th, he doesn't just take something from you. He takes something out of you. I slammed my laptop shut. He takes something out of you. What did that mean? The memory of my lost scarab felt sharper than ever. The empty hands of the little girl. I had to know more. I tried to find information on Old Man Hemlock, but there was nothing. The account was a ghost. I searched for news reports about the little girl. I didn't know her name, only the year and place. I found an article from a week after my encounter. A small piece in the back of the paper. A local family was pleading for information about their missing 5-year-old daughter, Emily. She had disappeared from Prospect Park. She was last seen playing near the woods by the long meadow. She had blonde pigtails and was carrying a yellow ball. She was never found. A wave of nausea washed over me. I wasn't just a witness. I was the last witness. The sing-song man hadn't taken the ball. He had taken her. And he had started with the ball to see if she would notice, to see if she would protest. She hadn't. I was living in a nightmare. This thing had attached itself to me 20 years ago, and now, my return to Brooklyn had reawakened it. It was toying with me, stealing my mugs and books, tasting my fear. How long until it escalated? What would he take next? The answer came 2 days later. I have one picture of my mother. She passed away from cancer when I was 19. In the photo, we're on the beach at Coney Island. I'm about 10 years old, grinning a gap-toothed smile, and she has her arm around me, laughing. Her eyes are so full of life. It's the single most important object I own. I keep it in a silver frame on my bedside table. I woke up that morning and it was gone. The frame was there, standing empty on the table. But the photograph itself had vanished. I didn't search for it. I knew he had taken it. This wasn't about a mug or a book anymore. This was a violation. He had reached into my life and stolen the one thing that was truly sacred. I fell to my knees, a dry, ragged sob tearing from my throat. It was a declaration of war. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later that evening. I was trying to calm myself down, trying to think. I closed my eyes and tried to picture my mother's face from the photograph, her smile, the way her hair fell across her shoulder, and I couldn't. I could remember the beach. I could remember my own stupid grin, but her face, it was blurry. It was like trying to remember a dream moments after waking. The details were slipping away. The harder I tried to grasp them, the faster they dissolved into mist. He'd take something out of you. He hadn't just taken the photograph. He was taking the memory itself. He was erasing her. This was the fourth line. This was what it meant to be forgotten. He wasn't making the world forget. He was making me forget. I realized then that I couldn't run. Moving away wouldn't solve anything. He wasn't tied to the park. He was tied to me. He would follow me wherever I went, patiently stealing my possessions, my memories, my past, until there was nothing left of Leo but an empty shell. I was being dismantled, piece by piece. I had only one choice. I had to go back to the park. I had to face him. I had to make a bargain. I knew where to go. The place where it all started. The little wooded area off the long meadow. I waited until dusk, the time when the world hangs between light and shadow. The park was emptying out, the joyful sounds of the day replaced by an expectant hush. I brought something with me, a trait. That's what a bargain was, right? I had my grandfather's watch. It was a beautiful, old silver pocket watch that he had carried in the war. He gave it to me on his deathbed. It was the only thing I owned that held nearly as much weight as the picture of my mom. As I walked into the Shadow Grove, the air grew heavy and cold. The world seemed to lose its color, everything fading to shades of gray. I heard him before I saw him. The sing-song voice, no longer a faint whisper, but clear and close. He was here. He was waiting for me. One for the asking. He sang. The voice seemed to come from the trees themselves. I stepped into the small clearing where I had seen him with the little girl, and there he was. He was just as I remembered him, a tall, thin silhouette in a wide-brimmed hat, his features lost in shadow. He was even more unreal up close. He didn't seem to be standing on the grass so much as superimposed over it, a tear in the fabric of reality. "I'm here," I said, my voice trembling but loud. "I heard you." He tilted his head. The second line came, a silken, terrifying whisper that slid directly into my brain without passing through my ears. 2 for the taking. As the words settled in my mind, I felt a strange lightness in my pocket. I reached in. My apartment keys were gone. Even now, he was stealing from me. "Stop," I yelled. "I want to make a bargain." I pulled my grandfather's watch from my other pocket. The silver gleamed faintly in the dying light. "Here, take this. It's worth a lot." To me, the sing-song man was silent for a long moment. Then, the third line of the song manifested in my thoughts. It felt ancient and binding. 3 for a bargain. He had agreed. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost made me buckle, washed over me. "I want my memory back," I said, my voice desperate. "My mother. I want to be able to remember her face." The tall figure shifted. He didn't speak, but an understanding flooded my mind, cold and transactional and utterly inhuman. A bargain was an exchange, a trade of equal value. He showed me the deal, not in words, but in images and feelings. He could give me the memory of my mother back. Every detail, perfectly preserved, locked in my mind forever. But in exchange, he had to take another memory of equal weight. He showed me my sister, Sarah. He showed me us as kids, building a terrible-looking snowman in the backyard. He showed me her crying with laughter at my wedding. He showed me her holding my hand at our mother's funeral. He showed me a lifetime of love and support, a pillar in my life. The choice was laid bare before me. To get my mother back, I had to give up my sister. I would have no memory of her. She would become a stranger to me. My mind would rewrite its own history, healing over the hole where she used to be. I would walk past her on the street and feel nothing. I looked at the indistinct horror in front of me. I looked at the watch in my hand. I thought of my mother's fading face, and I thought of Sarah's bright, constant smile. A sob of pure despair escaped me. "No," I whispered. "No, I can't." I couldn't do it. I couldn't erase my sister. It was too monstrous a price. I would rather live as a haunted man with a ghost for a mother than murder my sister in my own mind. I screamed, "The deal is off. I don't want it." I threw the watch at the shadowy figure. It passed right through him, landing on the grass with a soft thud. The sing-song man stood motionless. For the first time, I felt an emotion from him. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment. A cold, flat disappointment. The feeling of a connoisseur who has been presented with a spoiled meal. And then came the fourth line. He didn't sing it. He projected it. A wave of psychic force that threw me backwards onto the ground. And 4, to be forgotten. I scrambled up and ran. I ran just as I had 20 years ago, but this time there was no screaming, only a horrible, hollow silence in my soul. I didn't look back. I knew he wouldn't follow. The transaction was complete. I had refused the bargain, and now I would bear the consequence. I moved out of Brooklyn the next week. I sold my apartment and took a job in a different state, a place with no large parks, a place with no memories. I thought I could escape, but you can't escape something that has a piece of you. The sing-song man is still with me. He never appears. I never hear the full song, but his presence lingers. He is the quiet thief of my life. It's small things mostly, a pen from my desk, the TV remote, a single sock from the laundry. Each time I realize something is gone, I feel a faint cold echo of that day in the park. It's his tax, the price for my refusal, but sometimes it's more. A few months ago, I was trying to tell a coworker a story about my high school graduation. I opened my mouth to say my best friend's name, and it was gone. Not just the name, the whole person. I could remember the graduation, the cap and gown, but the person standing next to me in all my memories was a featureless blur. He's taking my past. Slowly, patiently, one tiny piece at a time. He is unmaking me. The memory of my mother's face is completely gone now, replaced by a painful, aching void. I know I love her, but I don't know her. I live in a constant state of low-grade dread. Every day I wake up and wonder what I have lost during the night. What small part of myself has been stolen while I slept? The feeling of being watched never goes away. He is always there, just at the edge of my senses, a tall, thin shadow in the corner of my eye. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken the bargain. Would it have been better? To have one perfect memory at the cost of another? I don't know. All I know is that I am slowly being erased. So, if you ever lose something, if you put your keys down in a place you know you left them and they're simply not there, if you have a word on the tip of your tongue that dissolves into nothing, stop for a second, listen to the silence, and pray you don't hear a song in it. Pray you haven't caught the attention of the tall, thin man in the hat, because he is always looking for new things to take, and he never, ever gives them back.